Hello, this is Cate Stillman, and welcome back to the Yoga Healer Real Life Show with me, your host. And I'm talking today about parenting styles with Ayurveda, about a parenting styles quiz, a little bit about attachment parenting, how to be a better parent in COVID or post-COVID, and just about getting a little bit more interested in your parenting skills. So part of the reason I'm doing this particular episode is there's a lot of questions coming in from our global pandemic and people spending a lot more time with their kids. There's a lot of opportunity in getting to know our kids better, in navigating working from home, navigating work-life relationships, navigating new boundaries, new habits, new rules at home. There's a lot of, what I noticed at first was there was a lot of permissiveness in terms of like, oh, well, we're just going to watch a lot of Netflix, or, oh, well, we can't really control our situation, so we're going to kind of let things go to hell in a handbag. So I noticed a bit about that just in general happening. And I also noticed another group of people really rising to the occasion of saying like, wow, like I can really become a better parent during this time. And there's also the flip side of this of like being a child. Everyone is obviously a child. Some people have been taking care of their parents. Some people's parents have been dying. Some people's, are just navigating like how to navigate COVID with parents. So there's a little bit of that side of the conversation as well. But we're really going to focus, at least the first part of the conversation here, on kids. Obviously, this conversation spans a number of years from, those of you who have babies, toddlers, preschool kids, school-age kids, junior hires, or tweens, teens, young adults. So I'm just going to, try to talk in a really general way and give specifics to each age group, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you or helpful to those that are wanting to be better parents right now. So a few of my thoughts in general are when COVID hit and people were spending more time at home, those who had already been navigating well in terms of a future that is VUCA, is volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous, that it was pretty much like a sweet welcomed transition of like, oh yeah, we get to be home more together. We get to be outside of the box. I love the term liminal thinking. Dave Gray, who I've interviewed on the show before, he wrote a book called Liminal Thinking, and liminal means that which is beyond the threshold. Beyond the threshold of what? Beyond the threshold of the patterned mind, beyond the threshold of samskaras, or the ruts that the mind takes, the ruts of our habits, of our habitual self. And when we're beyond the threshold of that, we're actually in the awake mind. We're in the place of potentiality. We're in the place where we could go in any direction, where we can choose any habit that might be appropriate for the next self, for the future self. As we start to activate our potential and choose a future that we want to step into, we are naturally and automatically beyond the threshold of the past. And the past for many people is where they live, right? So they think about the past. They have a lot of memories of the past, which generate feelings of the past and thoughts of the past and actions that they did in the past. And those habits are ruts. The yogis call those ruts, samskaras. And it's not a nice word. You don't want to be in samskaric type thinking. You want to be in liminal thinking. So when COVID hit, when pandemic hit, and we were spending more time, many of us were spending a lot more time with our children, we were naturally in the opportunity of a liminal space. And those that really stepped into that, a lot of learning and growth has happened. A lot of new, better rhythms in the household have happened. New, better habits have arisen. I'll just give an example of this. My daughter has one of those chalkboards on her door, which is super handy. Love chalkboard paint. And so we made a list the other day, and it was tied to a reward. And this is something that I picked up when I was writing Body Thrive and really studying behavioral science and what I call habit evolution, which is like behavioral sciences to evolving your habits. And there's these different thoughts about it. There's these different theories about it that come out of, a lot of them come out of behavioral science at Stanford and other big universities where they're studying like, how do we make the changes we want? And trigger habit reward is just a basic chunk of philosophy there. And really, some people even just say trigger habit, and you can leave the reward out of it. Just like you want to notice triggers and habits. The triggers are a time, a place, a preceding action, another person, or an emotion. So a lot of new habits happened in different directions, right? For people that were in fear, for people that were in contraction, that were in stress, maybe you lost your job, maybe it's harder to be a parent right now, maybe you've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and now you're working from home and you're like, how do I do this? I can't get any help. That could have triggered a stress pattern, and habits may have gone in a negative direction. And for others, they're like, they didn't have that situation. They had a situation where they had more time and space and could be more present in parenting and have better habits. And in that, potentialities really opened up. Okay, so with the choice making of how you want to parent, when even asking that question, you start to push yourself like beyond on the threshold, beyond the samskaras, beyond the habitual pattern, and you get into a place of asking like, hey, what kind of parent do I want to be next? And this next part of that question is really important, because otherwise it can be so big and so overwhelming. Even asking yourself like, how do I want to parent this week? And I'm going to give us some tips. I'm going to talk about 2 quizzes next, and these quizzes can help you get to know your child or your children better. And I'll talk a little bit about this door and the trigger habit reward before I do that. So with trigger habit reward, I had Indy we wrote on her door a bunch of the things that I had noticed were like, she had some habits that I would say were negative or bad or like just annoying. And so we put the positive, what she could do in order to get what she wanted. And trigger habit reward works. I think it works great with kids. There's a lot of controversy on this. Anyone who's read Emotional Intelligence knows. There's when rewards are really tied to something that the child wants and that are really good for the child's growth, then great. So Indy's big thing is she wants to drive. She loves driving. And she's driven a lot of golf carts in her time with her grandparents, and there's little opportunities. We live really far out in the country. She's 12 years old. She can't legally drive, but there's some, really, really quiet dead-end roads that she can practice in. So that's a really big reward for her. And then there's this list of things on her door that are prerequisites for that opportunity to occur. And so like really simple things are on that list. Doing Duolingo, it's a language app that we use here to learn Spanish, to be better Spanish speakers. That's on the list. Putting her jacket on the hook. This is big, so it doesn't end up on the floor. This is a really big one, samskara that we're trying to reverse in this time. And there's 6 or 7 other things on the door. So shaping our environment for success is really important, and having reminders. So if your kids can read, even before she could read, we used pictures for this kind of thing, and boards to track behaviors. And kids usually love to do this, and they like to check off the box or put the sticker next to the thing that they just did. It's super, super effective. I use it for myself as well on my whiteboard, which is right there. Okay, so understanding a little bit about behavior science, that you have a lot of flexibility. And as soon as you decide like, hey, I want to be a better parent this week, what behaviors do I want to see around the house? How do I want to architect our environment by using boards or chalkboards or checklists that are very interactive? Like, how can I design my environment to enable us to have better relationships? So that's something that, to me, is something that everyone should always be thinking about and iterating on. Because as you get better and better at that, you really realize how you can shape your environment and you can help shape your family's habits in a way that everybody has a better experience of each other, which to me is a great goal. Okay, so a few quizzes that I wanted to talk about. First is this quiz. This is from Donna Markova and Angie MacArthur. It's on, and there's a link in the show notes. You can Google their names, or you can just look in the show notes. So it's on visual, audio, and kinesthetic learning. So understanding, most kids are really strong in kinesthetic learning because they're in their bodies. But some kids are stronger in audio. Some kids are stronger in visual learning. And understanding what that is so important. Like my child is she's not focused at all in audio mode. So if I'm telling her to do something, it's not as good as showing her or drawing it out. That would be kinesthetic and then visual. So having like the checklist on the door is really important. Instead of me telling her, that's an audio instruction. Instead of me telling her like, hey, you need to pick up your jacket off the floor, for her to see on her door a box and a jacket on hook. That's the desired behavior. For her to see that is a way better way for me to parent her. So I almost never go to audio learning with my kid. My husband's also more kinesthetic and visual. So we've all taken that quiz, and I'm much more, I actually can concentrate in the audio format, as I'm guessing all you can because you listen to podcasts. So visual and audio are my dominant ways of focusing. And I'm much more zoned out in kinesthetic. So it's the opposite for me. So I can, so that when I'm looking at like, how do I be a better parent? It's really helpful for me to know how my partner focuses and how my child focuses. So that quiz is really super helpful. And if you don't know that about your kid, and really doesn't matter what age, I would get pretty interested in that, because you might find that just in knowing that and following the tips that they give you from that quiz, that you are much more effective in your communication and in designing trigger habit reward in a way that the person can actually really quickly pick it up and respond to. Okay, the second quiz that I really like is like, do you know your kids' Ayurvedic constitution? And this is something that if you don't know your own constitution, this can be helpful as well. So if you go to yogahealer.com/quiz, you'll end up on Banyan Botanical site. I know many of you, English is not your first language here because we have a global podcast. So quiz is Quiz. So yogahealer.com/quiz. And I would take that with, if say you have 3 children, I would take that same quiz with each child. And so that you get specific quiz results with each kid. And that'll help you both understand. Banyan will give you a list of like descriptions and kind of foods to eat and what kind of herbs to take when herbs are necessary, etc. And that can really be super, super helpful. I have 2 workshops on this. One is called Healthier Kids Workshop, where I help you understand your kid's constitution. That's at yogahealer.com/healthier-kids. And then I also have the Ayurvedic Constitutions Workshop, which is much more just like any, it's more geared towards adults. But if you watch it, you'll learn a ton about your kids. And that's at yogahealer.com/constitution. And those are also linked in the show notes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So what are parenting styles with Ayurveda? So parenting styles for Vata kids, parenting styles for Pitta kids, parenting styles for Kapha kids. Once you take the quiz, this will, maybe be even more helpful. But I'll talk to you as if you don't have that information, and maybe we'll never take the quiz. So Vata types in general, they have higher air and ether. They're light. And they're more ectomorphic, meaning they're like the wiry, skinny kids. Emotionally, they get really excited really easily. You can always tell what they're feeling. They can't really hide their emotions because they're just transparent. Like air and ether are transparent. Water and earth are obscure, but air and ether are transparent. So you always know what they're feeling. You always know what they're thinking. They can tend towards anxiety really easily because they're light, and and that energy, that light energy, can fluctuate really, really quickly. It doesn't get stagnant or heavy. And so with a post-COVID world, or, emerging from this global pandemic, the Vata kids are probably the kids that had a lot more fear, just naturally, about what was going on. Vata kids can have a harder time falling asleep. They often don't sleep as deeply. They have a harder time sitting down to eat meals. This can turn into like teenagers who eat really sporadically. It can turn into young adults who forget to eat. And when this happens, we're much less, any body type is like, honestly, just like much less in control of thinking and emotions. So stabilizing our blood sugar by eating real meals at regular times is really important for Vata kids to learn about themselves. That'll help them their whole lives, that they need to eat at whatever it is, 7:30, 12, and 5 every day, like around the same time, like every single day. And that helps them actually regulate their mind and their emotions. It creates a lot more emotional stability, so anxiety goes away, and then they can just naturally be enthusiastic and empowered, which is their natural mode of being. Vata kids are also super sensitive, and so when we are living in a VUCA world that's volatile and uncertain and chaotic and ambiguous, like this can affect Vata types the most. So they need the self-care practices even more than the other body types. The regularity of eating, the regularity of, for little kids, of having the same routine before bed, of having the bath and the oil massage and the story. For older kids, for having time to unpack the day, to having time to reflect on the day. Me and my 12-year-old do this orally. We talk about it, right? So as she's getting ready for bed, as she gets in bed, then I sit with her in bed and we talk about anything that's on her mind, and that helps actually deeply balance Vata, even though she's not a Vata body type. If I had a kid with a Vata body type, like we might even do that more than once a day, of just allowing the processing of emotion and of reflection, because they're so sensitive. You want to help them really orient their nervous system to like, hey, yeah, like the world's uncertain, but our habits, our routines, those are certain, right? Our meal times, those are certain. Our bedtime, that's certain. How we exercise in the morning, that we do with certainty. And so for Vata types too, I mean, every body type, every kid type needs meditation. And the sooner you can bring that in for Vatas, it can help them really explore the lightness of their mind, the lightness of their nervous system and physiology, in a really grounded way. And for older kids, I would say it becomes really essential, because otherwise the Vata emotions, because there's naturally sensitivity, and because in negativity the emotions go towards fear and anxiety and overwhelm, and we're living in a world that has more of that anyways. It can be really hard to navigate. It can be really scary. So it doesn't matter if like you've got a kid that's like leaving, trying to leave for college, and college is getting canceled, or college is getting rescheduled, or now there's all this online learning. Well, online learning, and I've done it for full time since 2007, leading yoga healer. It's amazing. And it's a lot more etheric than in-person learning. And so for Vata types, like it can be actually quite aggravating. So knowing how to navigate that, knowing how to do real things in the real world is super, super important. So my parenting style with a Vata kid, which I don't have, but if I did, would be all about routine and rhythm and regularity. That would be the name of the game. All right, so for parenting styles with a Pitta kid. So Pitta means fire and water, and it's a Pitta type. There's an intensity and a sharpness. There's usually a very strong mind that likes to process and digest things quickly. Usually physiologically, the body has an increased appetite, can digest a lot, and needs a lot of calories. Also needs a much more clean diet than the other type. So like a Pitta kid's going to break out with acne if they have too much sugar, or if they have too much grease, or they have too much food that's just polluted with stuff that's toxic to the body, which might be like anything that's in a bag of Doritos, right? Like stuff like that. Stuff that sometimes, like, especially for those of you parenting Pitta teenagers, Pitta young adults, like this is something that if they take the quiz and they come out high Pitta, I would just look right away at like, okay, their mind is really sharp, which means with a Pitta kid, they can actually digest intellectually. They can digest a lot intellectually. And with Pitta types, kids and adults, what's really important is not like telling the kid what to do. So like authoritarian parenting does not work well with Pitta types, because they want to know why. Why should you do it? Because I told you to. That is not going to be a healthy relationship. I mean, really with any of the types, but like with a Pitta kid, you're going to really aggravate a Pitta kid. And that's like putting lighter fluid on a fire. So it's going to flare up. It's going to flare up in your face, and you're going to get burned as the parent. Not good. And it's not healthy for the kid either. So just taking time to actually unpack why to what of anything. So say your kid, say you have a Pitta kid and they have acne, or you have a teenage girl who's going through a lot of hormonal changes and her diet's not that clean. For her to understand why is really important. So I would watch videos together. I would, I would take the quiz here together. I'd watch the Healthier Kids workshop together. I would do the Ayurvedic Constitutions workshop together. Just like learn about you, like learn why. Because why empowers that sharp intellect of a Pitta kid to understand the power of their digestion and their need for a clean diet. So Pitta is so easily polluted. If you think of the water component of Pitta, and it's sensitive particularly to toxicity. So it's sensitive like Vata, but it's sensitive more towards pollutants. And you think of like all the chemicals that are in food, or say your kid's drinking soda, or say your kid's eating too much sugar, or say your kid's eating too much processed food. It's going to be so polluting to a Pitta type that the body will be like constantly trying to process the toxins out. And for any kid going through puberty, this is where like the kid's transitioning from the Kapha time of life, which is like watery and earthy. It's from conception through until the beginning of puberty, and then puberty into young adulthood. It's all of a sudden Pitta's picking up big time. And so this like juicy, moist kid all of a sudden gets to be, they start to sprout, they get taller. And that increase in sensitivity becomes more and more important. The sensitivity of like how delicate our endocrine system is that's running all the hormonal changes. So my parenting style with Pittas in general, with even little kid Pittas, is like be super conscious that their diet needs to be clean. They need to be fueled regularly. They need more fat and protein than the other types. And that they need to, like the Vata types, they need to eat really regularly on schedule, but they're also going to burn hotter and stronger. So it's, even more important for the Pitta kid types, like to have, say they're going from like school to practice, that they have real food in that time, that you're not giving them a bag of snack food. You're not giving them a high carb experience that's just going to like, not deeply sustain their deeper tissue of their body. So you want to really think about fueling your Pitta kid. Like with Vata, we focused on regularity, and with Pitta, it's like quality, like really high quality foods that are higher in protein and clean fats. Clean fats like avocado, clean fats like sprouted almonds, sprouted pumpkin seeds, like that, and just energy food like that is just, it's so important. I will often we eat meat in our house, so like high quality, like a high quality salami, high quality cheeses. Or for my kid between like school and practice is really quite good. Other types, things to think about with parenting styles with Pitta, this need to reflect is important, because Pittas are so future focused in general. They have a vision, they're moving towards that vision, and getting them to pause and reflect at the end of the day on like, hey, what's working? Hey, what didn't work? It's really important for Pitta types to sort through, and then to use their power of vision or mental rehearsal so that they can mentally rehearse what they want to have happen the next day. It's just such a phenomenal skill to use with your Pitta kid. All right, Kapha kids, Kapha parenting styles, or parenting styles with Kaphas. So Kapha is water and earth. It's the heavier, denser kids. They're more endomorphic, meaning they have more padding. And I'm not talking at all about kids that are overweight, because that, like, you can have a Vata kid that's overweight. You can have a Pitta kid that's overweight. You can have a Kapha kid that's underweight. So it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with what is their innate constitution. And so when you take the quiz, or you have your kid take the quiz, and they come out Kapha, this just means that they're naturally have a little more density to their body. They emotionally are more stable. They're more fluid. They're more go with the flow. They're usually highly relational. They're just usually more on the mellow side, whereas like the Pitta kids are, a little bit more sharp. The Vata kids are a little bit more, what's the word? Just, like enthusiastic and like running around and more busybody. Whereas the Kapha kids they're just mellower. They're more stable. They're more fluid. They're more grounded. And so for parenting with Kapha, like one of the things that Kapha can implode. It can be so stable it becomes stagnant. And with if I had a kid that was really Kapha, I would make sure that we woke up and got exercise. Like I would make that like the biggest priority of parenting, of like, okay, we're going to go for a walk. We're going to go for a run. We're going to turn on some music. We're going to have a dance party. We're going to do CrossFit. We're going to do like whatever it is. And for those who you might not really like the toddler years, those of you who have really young children, all little kids are in Kapha time of life. So they naturally do this. They naturally want to wake up and start moving around. And you want to keep that as a habit. So even as the kids start to go to preschool and start to go to school and start to go to, leave home and go to college, that they have this habit of like waking up and moving. Because Kapha is so dense, it needs to feel lightness to feel its own potentiality. Otherwise, it can get stuck. It can get stagnant. With Kapha type kids, they do not, like even with the other kids, like I'm so not big on snacks. I'm so much bigger on eat real meals, eat real fuel, don't live off carbs. Kapha types are super sensitive to this. So if you want to be a terrible parent to your Kapha child, have snacks around. Encourage snacking from a young age. Keep snacks available, in the house. Snack yourself. Like that's really probably like one of the worst things that you can do if you're parenting a Kapha kid. Getting into meal spacing, helping them actually feel the power of their innate energy, of their deep resilience, and getting them to activate that energy is part of their leadership style. They're dependable, and helping them actually be that for other people. Kapha has so much generosity in its own physicality that it has extra to give away. And so Kaphas naturally can serve more, and they become more awake and alive when they're doing something of service, when they're making food to share for another person, or when they're organizing a project that involves other people, and that activates their energy. So when a Kapha isolates, when a Kapha kid isolates, they'll tend to do more emotional eating, and that will cause implosion. They'll tend to stagnate, and that's really really what you want to train a Kapha child to not do. You want to teach them how to be grounded and how to energize themselves through movement, how to energize themselves through only eating 3 times a day and not snacking, and really staying away from carbs, away from things that are too sweet and too heavy, and getting them much more in tune that their nature is light. And movement is just so, so important, because then they'll feel their own lightness and they'll start to feel their own power. Evening activities that are very physical in nature are really important if you're Kapha and you've got Kapha kids. We have a lot of Kapha in my family. We play basketball at night. We have a great hoop outside our house. So we'll go outside, we'll play a game. Sometimes we'll play soccer. Sometimes we'll have a little dance party. We'll have the dishes going. We'll do housework. We'll do things that are very physical. We'll clean the garage. We'll do active projects after dinner. So we eat dinner early enough to have that really active energy after eating. And that just is very deeply energizing for those who have a lot of Kapha. We have energy that's more than we need, essentially. All right, so those are some just parenting styles with Ayurveda, what you want to be thinking about. Again, the workshops are going to be super helpful. I can't recommend enough just understanding your kids, if they're audio focused, visual focused, or kinesthetic focused. That again is Donna Markova and Angie MacArthur. Links in the show notes. And then taking an Ayurvedic quiz, go to yogahealer.com/quiz to know your constitution. And then the workshops I'm really recommending are like get to know your kid's constitution. That's my Healthier Kids workshop. And then just get to know constitutions in general, so you can tell the difference between ama or toxicity and how that makes it tricky to understand a constitution, where you can know with, overweight, is it Vata, Pitta, Kapha? There's tons of links in those workshops as well. And there's other podcasts that I have on overweight Vata, overweight Pitta, overweight Kapha. If you Google those, or you'll find them in the show notes, those are great follow-up conversations to this one. All right, I hope you've enjoyed parenting styles with Ayurveda. Be a better parent. Get to know your kid. Help your kid get to know themselves. And in that, you're empowering them from within. It's the most grounding thing you can do. And again, creating this deep strength and rhythm at home is the best way to focus a future that's more VUCA, that's more volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. All right, this has been Cate Stillman with Yoga Healer Real Life Show. Spread the word. It's how we spread great ideas around here. Namaste, and have a great day.